Welcome to Season 2 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. On the show, we'll look at the who, what, where, why, when, and how of moving out of your education career and into a life you love. In this season, we'll meet ex-teachers who have taken their hobbies and passions from outside of education and created a new career for themselves. We'll talk to people who can support and inspire us as we make the transition and work on identifying the legacy we want to leave in the world. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 15. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm very pleased to be interviewing Courtney Young. Hi Courtney, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hi Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me.
So Courtney, tell us what got you into teaching in the first place.
Yeah, so context, in high school, I really got into reading. Like I didn't grow up a reader, but I had some really excellent English teachers in high school that kind of sparked that interest. And so when it was time for me to go to college, I was like, well, what did I like doing the most? Reading, analyzing literature. Okay, so I ended up being an English education major, so I double majored, got my bachelor's degree in English education, and started teaching in the public school system.
Okay, so what year level were you teaching?
So I was teaching 11th and 12th grade English and kind of ran like the gamut of levels. So we had what's called co-taught, which means that there's a certain number of special education students in the room, all the way through, I taught AP language 1 year, I taught international baccalaureate 2 years. But mainly 11th and 12th grade.
So here in Australia, you'd be very unlikely to give a graduate those higher year levels. How did you manage to secure that role?
Yeah, it's what was handed to me actually right out of undergrad, and I was just as surprised because at that point I was like 22 and my students were 18, and so I was like, I hope they don't know my age because that might cause some management issues. But yeah, so I was given those, and I think the principal probably saw my enthusiasm and thought, this is what we could use in those grades. So, but yeah, that's what I ended up teaching.
Fantastic. And so how long were you actually teaching for?
So it was 4 years. Yeah, 4 years all at the same school.
Okay. And then did you move schools or did you leave after 4 years?
So I left after 4 years, and this kind of brings me into kind of what got me starting thinking about leaving. So 2 years in, I experienced such burnout. I just felt like my life was consumed by teaching. I was getting to the school building at 7 a.m. or before that so that I could be one of the first in line to use the printer if it was working. And then I was staying until 5 or 6 at night preparing and lesson planning and grading, and then I'd take things home. And so it was just very consuming. And so I didn't feel like that was sustainable. So I entered a graduate program, kind of adding more to my plate, hoping that it would pay off later, which it did. So I started a graduate program 2 years into teaching.
So can you explain what that is? I'm not really sort of as maybe familiar as the US audience might know.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So it was a master's degree program.
Okay.
And I was studying higher education administration, and I was doing it totally online. So it was the type of thing where I would take 1 to 2 classes at a time, and I'd be doing work for those classes on the weekends and sometimes during the week, along with still my teaching work, the grading, the planning, all of that. But all in an effort to hopefully leave. So I graduated in May of my 4th and final year teaching, and a week later was offered another position that I took.
Right. Okay. So when was that?
You said where was that?
When?
Oh, so that was, so graduated early May of, I guess that would be 2019. Yeah,
Okay.
May
Yeah.
2019. And then was offered that job, took that job, and started in very late May of 2019 and did not look back.
So you were only actually teaching for 4 years.
That's right.
Yeah. So a nice short career. So most of the people I talk to have been, dragging out for decades. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
didn't take long to pivot.
No, I didn't. I didn't. And it's funny. I had some guilt 2 years in, thinking, oh, I really don't want to do this anymore. Um, and I turned to other teachers to kind of seek advice, and it was very split. Some people were like, you should get out now while you can, and other people were like, you should just give it a few more years. The kids really need you. So I took all of that into consideration and ultimately decided to go.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you're younger, it's kind of easier maybe to be a bit more flexible when you're not as bogged down with, you know, family commitments, mortgage. And I know a lot of the people that I talk to and work with who are a bit older have young adult children who they're still kind of half supporting, and elderly parents. And that's really hard then to change your job as well. You've got a lot happening already. And so to get out when you're relatively young, and start something new seems like a really wise plan to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did still experience some of those hesitancies. I do have a house. I have a mortgage. I was thinking about that. Um, I was concerned initially that I wouldn't be able to find something that paid as much, even though it wasn't a lot to begin with. But
Do
I
you mind
didn't
me
want to get to
asking approximately how much you were earning as a teacher?
Yeah, so I started at about 45,000,
Mm-hmm.
and in my 4 years, at the end of that 4 years, I was making about 49.
Right, and that's US dollars, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you were about to leave and you worried about all those things and paying off your mortgage and everything, how did you overcome that fear, that hesitation?
Honestly, I went to therapy about it, because while experiencing that hesitation, I was also experiencing some anxiety with going into the classroom, kind of day in and day out, and just having the burden of all of the things that come with being a teacher, on me. So I went to therapy and kind of worked all of that out. And the biggest takeaway there was, ultimately, like, what I need to prioritize myself, and I'm not even able to give my best self right now because I am so burnt out, right? So I really worked on accepting that and accepting that this would be the best thing for me, and everything just kind of fell into place after I believed that.
Hmm. Courtney, do you think that if the school hadn't put that load on you of the higher year levels, the senior year levels, and the huge responsibility that is to get them over the line to get into further study, would that have made a difference to your career?
No, not at all. I really enjoyed working with juniors and seniors, and I think that they're like almost adults, and I think, in retrospect, that's what I prefer to work with adults. I think really what did it was the big class sizes. Like, that's a national issue, right? It might be international, I'm not sure, but I had 40 students, in my AP class, and that should never happen.
That's a lot.
um, it is a lot. So, I had an average of about 35 in all of my other classes. And so all of the work that comes from those things combined, like if I'm assigning an essay, that's 35 or 40 essays just for one class that I'm having to grade and get back in a timely manner. There's kind of the way we do standardized testing that kind of puts a burden on teachers. The way they do teacher evaluation isn't necessarily the most objective way to do it here. So all of those things combined just kind of became a lot.
Yeah, that sounds huge. So have that many essays to mark. How long would it take you to mark an essay?
Gosh, it depends. So if I were grading an AP Lang paper or an International Baccalaureate paper, you'd say maybe 15 minutes per essay.
Times 35.
Right. And at least on a weekly basis, because those are higher level courses. Those are meant to be like college level courses. And they also are preparing for those standardized tests, right? So we have to keep that level of rigor up. But for one teacher, that's really just not sustainable unless all you do is work.
Yeah, yeah. So there's no social life, there's no balance, there's no harmony.
Right, exactly. I mean, there was a point where I really was just like working and sleeping, and that was kind of it.
Okay, so tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I had mentioned that I earned my master's degree in higher education administration. So my day job, I am working in college graduate admissions as an admissions counselor. And then I have a business of my own where it's really two-faceted. So I offer career services, resume writing and cover letter writing. And then I also offer educational services, which is essentially being a writing tutor, where I give asynchronous sessions or synchronous sessions, depending on what people want.
So tell us a bit more about what are the writing tutoring look like? So when you say asynchronous, tell us how does that work out in practice?
Yeah, so a synchronous session looks like myself and a student, a college student preferably, meeting in Zoom. And beforehand, they will have sent me their assignment, rubric, and instructions. And we're just kind of talking out how to go about the assignment. So I was actually a writing tutor when I was at university. And I did that pretty much the whole time I was there and loved that. So I'm really happy to be able to get back to that because that's essentially what this is. So that's a synchronous session. It's 30 minutes in Zoom where we're kind of talking over the assignment, generating ideas, coming out with a thesis, depending on the type of assignment it is, or an outline. For the asynchronous sessions, this is somebody has written a rough draft and they just want a second pair of eyes on it. So they send it to me and I will give suggestions on content as well as grammar, syntax, diction, all of that.
Fantastic. So it's really just like a honing and cleaning up a piece of writing so that it's more at a higher academic standard.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, when I say just, I don't mean just like.
Yeah, no, I
sounds
definitely.
like a lot of work. And I know when I was writing my assignments for my masters, I was never organized enough to get anyone to look over my work beforehand. So it sounds like a great service for the organized student. All right, so tell us about the resume writing side of things then. What is that? So you've actually kind of got three jobs. You've got your paid job, and then you've got your business, which is your writings tutorials, and then you've also got the resume and cover letter writing. So tell us about that side of things.
Yeah, so for that, I think a lot of people, when they go to apply to positions, will come up with a very generalized resume and send that out to like 50, different job postings, and then they don't hear anything and become really frustrated. I've found that really, in order to create an effective resume or cover letter, one has to really hone into what an individual employer is looking for. So even down to using the same verbiage that's used in the job posting in the resume, because especially if you're applying to, you know, a bigger company that has, you know, an HR department that'll just read your resume through a computer that picks out keywords, you want to make sure that those keywords are there. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of research. And so people aren't necessarily willing to do that, but I am willing to do that for them. So that's what I do. So essentially I have a questionnaire that I'll send to clients, and they will fill out their work history and leadership roles and education, and then they'll attach a couple of job postings that their ideal job that they'd be looking to get.
Okay.
And I create their resume and or cover letter.
Wow. So I imagine that you might potentially create a resume for someone and then have them come back to you 2 or 3 times to help craft a really great cover letter so that they can apply for different jobs as they find them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so how long does that process normally take?
It very much depends. It could be, I could spend maybe 3 to 4 hours just kind of doing research on a particular field, just so I'm feeling comfortable creating a resume around that role. And then maybe another 2 or so hours just actually generating the documents.
Right. So from the client's point of view, what's sort of the lead time for something like that?
Yeah, so standard, I give myself 5 business days, but I also offer rushed services on a regular basis. You know, just kind of depends on what people want. You know, and I remember this, like when I was looking for jobs, I would see that, oh, you know, this job posting closes in 2 days, and I really need to put the time in to get things done. But that was difficult when I was a teacher because I was busy grading. And so then it became, do I put time into my resume or do I put time into grading papers?
Yes,
So
I think
yeah,
I've been there.
yeah, exactly. So I'm happy to offer rushed services just on an individual basis.
Yeah, awesome. And so someone wanted to get in touch with you for one of those things. What would be the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's cywritingspecialist.com. I also have an email if they would like to email me directly at cywritingspecialist@gmail.com. And then I have a Facebook page called CY Writing Specialist.
Awesome. And I will put all those links in the show notes for this episode too. So if you're interested in speaking to Courtney or getting in touch with her about any of those things, you can find all those details in the show notes. So Courtney, tell us, what do you reckon were the skills that you took from your years of teaching into your new role, or into your new roles actually?
Yeah. I would definitely say a big one is customer service. And that might be surprising to some people. But honestly, as a teacher, parents, and sometimes even, you know, students are seen as customers. And so I was able to kind of take those skills and bring them into my new roles, all of them. And then I would also say there's definitely management skills, you know, managing, writing and implementing curriculum, managing just a group of 40 people at one time is huge, and that's absolutely transferable.
Like
I'd
team
say those are the.
Yeah. Okay. And so apart from you did your master's, was there any other sort of study or information that you needed to gather in order to do any of the work that you're doing now?
No, actually, no, just my master's, and you know, luckily my bachelor's degree was in English, and so I'm a decent writer. So that comes in handy with the resume and the cover letter writing and such.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. So you actually did this lovely sidestep, and you were all prepared already.
Yeah, which is great.
So if you were to encounter another teacher who's at that crossroads, that point where they're feeling burned out or demoralized by their job and they're thinking of leaving, but they're not sure, and they've got all those concerns that you talked about having to pay off a mortgage and also just the time and effort that you've invested in your career, what advice would you give to someone in that position?
I would say that it's absolutely worth leaving if you're not really happy, because honestly, like, we work for 30 or 40 years, and that is a really long time to not like your life. And when I had that realization, that was a really big turning point, because I'm in my late 20s and had so many years ahead of me, of working, that like I just couldn't fathom being in a job that I disliked for that long. So I would say, if it's meant to work out, then it absolutely will.
And so do you have any regrets?
No, not at all. Absolutely none. I'm so happy that I took that really a leap of faith, and it worked out as well as it did.
Yeah, great. And so, Courtney, before we wrap this up, what's the legacy that you want to leave in the world?
I would like to leave the idea that you are never truly stuck. And that goes for careers and also just life circumstances, right? I think particularly in teaching, a lot of teachers will feel, they put so many years and all this education into being a teacher, and now, like, they feel like they can't do anything else. And I mean, I felt like that for a little while, but that's not true. That, like, it's just not true at all. So I would like to kind of spend my life and my time helping people realize that they are never truly stuck.
Awesome. That's such a great legacy to leave in the world. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really good time.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises, with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Do you know someone else who could benefit from hearing more stories of hope and transition from teachers all around the world? Please take a moment to share this and other episodes via your podcast app. Each share helps me reach listeners just like you who can benefit from this content. The Get Out of Teaching podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network. For show notes and other resources, please visit larksong.com.au/podcast.